Alan here. I was watching Better Late Than Never the other day, and that's a show with George Foreman, Terry Bradshaw, William Shatner, and Henry Winkler traveling around Europe. It's their second season. The first season last year, they traveled around Asian countries together. And in the episode this week, they went to this art studio where they're going to do some sculpting. And Henry Winkler decided to be their model. And unfortunately, he was their nude model because he was getting out of his comfort zone and out of everybody else's too. I mean, childhood memories of the Fonzie, childhood hero. Everybody liked the Fonz back then. And here he is with old gray hair and no clothes. Just not what I remember as a kid. But, bringing this to martial arts, why am I talking about this? He was there and people did their little sculptures, which were different. And if you think about it, if you were in that room, whether you have a model with clothes on or unclothed, man or woman, I don't care. Pick your own model. But if you're in that room, what you sculpt or what you paint is going to be different depending on where you're sitting in the room. If you are facing the person, you're going to have a different picture or sculpture than a person that's behind them facing the other direction, right? And isn't that sort of martial arts and our techniques? They're going to be different depending on our perspective. Now, there was a video a while back with Paladin, which I'm still sad that they're gone, but they are gone now. But if you ever saw this video, Lauren, Mark, and Vince each show responses to the same kind of attack relative to the styles that they practice and teach. And, that's 3. And if you had 6 or a dozen instructors, you could have 12 different responses to the same kind of attacks. And there was a magazine a long time ago that had similar things. Each episode or edition of the magazine would have an attack and several different responses based on different types of arts and instructors. And so we look at it, we have all these different perspectives, and our perspective is what dictates what technique we use to defeat that attack. And the sad thing in the martial arts, rather than collect a lot of perspectives to have a better understanding, sometimes we criticize other people's perspectives because that's not what we do, and that's not the perspective we have. And sometimes that's sort of shallow thinking. And I've even seen that sometimes at seminars. I travel and go to different seminars. Sometimes they're big seminars where there's a lot of instructors, and I'll just be one of many instructors. And I like to go and partake in the other instructors' workshops and see where they're coming from and what they're doing. And sometimes it's quite different from what I do. And sometimes it's tough for me to grasp exactly why and what they're doing. And so it takes a little thought, and I'll ask questions and get down to why they're doing it the way they do it. And often there's a good reason behind it, even though it's different from what I do and what I teach. And so that, I think, is important, that we should all be doing that and trying to understand each other's perspectives and why. Doesn't mean we have to change. If you're happy sitting in front of the model and drawing that side, you don't have to go around and draw the back. But when you see that person's photo or sculpture or whatever they have from the back, you should understand why it's different from yours. And not criticize them saying it's wrong because it's not the same as yours, because it's right from their perspective. And we need to think about that in our martial arts. It's right from their perspective. Maybe they practice an art that came from a certain weapon type system. And so their empty hand techniques are based on the weapon techniques that they also incorporate. And maybe your art doesn't have the same weapons, so what you're doing is different. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Neither of them are wrong. They're just different. And what one person might make work for them, another person may do something completely different that works for them. And so let's not criticize those. Let's learn and embrace the different perspectives to get a better picture of the whole, to become better martial artists. Even if we don't practice the whole, because it's impossible to practice everything. You can't practice and become competent in every martial art out there. There's just not enough hours in the week. I mean, it's tough enough to accomplish in certain arts, let alone all of them. Some of us will dabble in this and that and focus on our core art. And sometimes we'll incorporate some things from other arts to supplement ours that may be lacking in certain areas. And that's wonderful to do, and I encourage it. But I also wanted to mention that sometimes a person's perspective could change. Maybe years ago I learned something from an instructor that I really liked, and I practiced it and I taught it. But then along came a seminar or someone else and a different instructor, and they showed me how to do something a little different in the same situation, and I liked that better. So I start training and practicing and teaching that way rather than the way that I used to. And that's how we all can evolve and become better. We should all be striving to become better. Instructors, you can't stop learning just because you're teaching. We always have to keep learning, keep sharing what we learn, and keep trying to better ourselves. And that way we become better instructors and we can help more people. So that's just sort of a little ramble I wanted to talk about is, what perspective are your techniques from? And when you see something different, try to learn the perspective and where it came from and broaden yourself and become a better martial artist, not necessarily having to do it that way, but understand why others are doing it that way and be accepting of it rather than criticizing anyone and everyone that doesn't do it your way, because they all can be right. If we surround that model, every perspective is going to be a little different, and every perspective is going to be right for their angle. And so that's what we need to remember, and that's what we need to focus on when we're bettering ourselves, rather than criticizing and looking down at things that have a different perspective and that are different than what we're doing. So train hard, train safe, live with your warrior's edge, which is just a powerful way of living by incorporating the training and the tenets of warriorship that we can live by.